In the shadowed halls of Blackthorn Manor, a grand celebration turns deadly when Sir Reginald Barrington is poisoned in a locked library. Hercule Poirot, the brilliant Belgian detective, unravels a web of betrayal, hidden passages, and long-buried secrets. With a cast of suspects, each hiding motives of love, greed, and revenge, Poirot's little grey cells face their greatest challenge. Can he solve the mystery before the killer strikes again? Dive into a classic Agatha Christie tale of suspense, where every clue counts and the truth is as shocking as it is inevitable. Chapter 1. The Gathering at Blackthorn Manor. In the soft gloaming of an October evening, Blackthorn Manor stood like a sentinel against the rolling mists of the Devonshire countryside. Its ivy-clad towers and mullioned windows gleamed faintly under the last rays of a fading sun, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns. The manor, home to the esteemed Barrington family, was a relic of old England, its walls steeped in history and whispered secrets. Tonight, however, it hummed with an unusual energy. For Sir Reginald Barrington, patriarch and financier of considerable repute, had summoned a gathering of family and friends to celebrate his 60th birthday. Beneath the polished veneer of festivity, a current of unease rippled through the air, as though the house itself sensed the storm to come. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal chronicler of Hercule Poirot's exploits, arrived at Blackthorn Manor by invitation of Sir Reginald himself. Though the precise nature of the summons remained vague, Hastings stepped from the chauffeured car, his breath catching in the crisp autumn chill. He adjusted his scarf, noting the grandeur of the manor's facade, and felt a familiar thrill at the prospect of a weekend in such distinguished company. Yet, as he crossed the gravel drive, he could not shake the sensation that the evening held more than mere celebration. Inside, the great hall was a vision of opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms of light across polished oak paneling, and a fire roared in the immense hearth, warming the guests who mingled with glasses of sherry and polite laughter. Hastings surveyed the assembly, his military eye noting each figure with precision. Sir Reginald, a tall man with silver hair and a commanding presence, stood at the center, his smile gracious but strained. Beside him was his wife, Lady Eleanor, a woman of ethereal beauty whose delicate hands fluttered nervously as she greeted her guests. Their daughter, Miss Clara Barrington, moved through the crowd with the poise of youth, her auburn hair catching the firelight, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of defiance. Among the guests were Dr. Malcolm Faber, a physician with a scholarly air and a habit of adjusting his spectacles; Mrs. Beatrice Langley, Sir Reginald's widowed sister, whose sharp tongue and sharper gaze missed little Mr. Victor Crane, a business associate whose slick charm and tailored suits suggested ambition far beyond his station. There was also Miss Sylvia Wren, Clara's childhood friend, whose quiet demeanor and downcast eyes hinted at some unspoken burden. Rounding out the party were Colonel Rupert Hargreaves, a retired officer with a booming laugh, and his wife, Mrs. Amelia Hargreaves, whose penchant for gossip was matched only by her fondness for gin. As Hastings accepted a glass of sherry from a passing servant, he overheard snatches of conversation. Mrs. Langley was lamenting the state of the family's finances, her voice low but biting. "Reginald thinks he can hide it, but the estate is bleeding money. That wretched deal with Crane will be our ruin." Across the room, Clara was speaking in hushed tones to Sylvia, her words inaudible but her expression fierce. Dr. Faber, meanwhile, stood alone by the fireplace, his fingers tracing the edge of a medical journal he carried, his brow furrowed as though wrestling with a private conundrum. Dinner was announced at precisely 8 o'clock, and the guests filed into the dining room, where a long mahogany table gleamed under candlelight. The meal was exquisite: roast pheasant, creamed potatoes, and a claret of impeccable vintage, but the atmosphere grew taut as the evening progressed. Sir Reginald, seated at the head of the table, raised his glass for a toast. "To family, to friends, and to the future of Blackthorn Manor," he declared, his voice resonant yet oddly hollow. The guests murmured their agreement, but Hastings noted the fleeting glances exchanged between them: Clara's scowl at her father, Victor Crane's sly smile, and Lady Eleanor's trembling hand as she sipped her wine. The conversation turned to Sir Reginald's recent business ventures, particularly a lucrative but controversial deal with a foreign consortium. Brokered by Crane. Colonel Hargreaves, his face flushed from wine, boomed, "Risky business, Reginald, dealing with those chaps abroad. Hope you've got your wits about you." Sir Reginald's smile tightened, and he replied, "My wits, Rupert, have never failed me." Yet Hastings, ever observant, caught the flicker of unease in his host's eyes. As dessert was served a delicate lemon soufflé, the mood shifted further. Mrs. Langley, her voice cutting through the chatter, remarked, "It's all very well to toast the future, Reginald, but what of the past? There are debts that cannot be paid with claret." A silence fell, broken only by the clink of silver on porcelain. Clara rose abruptly, excusing herself with a murmured apology, and Sylvia followed, her face pale. Lady Eleanor's hand tightened on her napkin, and Sir Reginald's jaw clenched. Though he said nothing, it was nearing 10 o'clock when the first sign of true discord emerged. A sharp cry echoed from the upper floor, followed by the sound of shattering glass. The guests froze, their eyes darting toward the staircase. Sir Reginald stood, his face ashen. "Excuse me," he said curtly, and strode from the room. Hastings, his instincts sharpened by years at Poirot's side, followed at a discreet distance. Noting the time, 10:03 p.m. in the corridor above, Sir Reginald stood before a broken vase, its shards scattered across the Persian rug. Clara, her face flushed, was speaking rapidly. "It was an accident, Father, I swear." Sir Reginald's voice was low, almost menacing. "Accidents, Clara, have consequences. You will explain yourself later." He turned, catching sight of Hastings, and forced a smile. "A trivial matter, Captain. Please, return to the others." Hastings complied, but his mind was already turning. The broken vase, the heated exchange, the undercurrents of tension. He sensed a puzzle forming, one that would soon demand the attention of his friend, Hercule Poirot. As he rejoined the guests, he noted their strained expressions, their forced laughter. Something was amiss at Blackthorn Manor, something that went beyond a shattered vase or a family quarrel. The evening drew to a close, and the guests retired to their rooms, each with their own thoughts and secrets. Hastings, unable to sleep, stood by his window, gazing out at the moonlit gardens. The manor seemed to hold its breath, as though waiting for the inevitable. He checked his watch. 11:47 p.m. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed midnight, its notes lingering like a warning. Little did Hastings know that by morning, Blackthorn Manor would be the scene of a crime that would shake its ancient walls to their foundations. Crime that would summon the inimitable Hercule Poirot to unravel its secrets with his little grey cells. Chapter 2. The Shadow of Death. The dawn broke over Blackthorn Manor, with a deceptive serenity. The first light of morning painting the Devonshire hills in hues of gold and amber. Yet, within the manor's ancient walls, a pall of dread had settled, as though the very stones sensed the tragedy that had unfolded in the night. Captain Arthur Hastings, roused from a fitful sleep by a sharp knock at his door, felt an instinctive prickle of unease. It was 6:42 a.m., and the household was already stirring, not with the usual bustle of a country estate, but with a hushed urgency that spoke of calamity. The knock came again, more insistent, and Hastings opened the door to find a pale-faced maid, her eyes wide with fear. "Captain Hastings, sir, you're wanted downstairs at once." "It sits, Sir Reginald. He's dead." The word hung in the air, heavy and final. Hastings, his heart quickening, dressed swiftly and followed the maid down the grand staircase, noting the unnatural silence that had replaced the previous evening's chatter in the library. A room of towering bookshelves and rich leather furnishings. A grim scene awaited. Sir Reginald Barrington lay slumped in a high-backed chair by the fireplace, his head tilted at an unnatural angle, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. A glass of brandy, half drunk, rested on the table beside him, its amber contents catching the morning light. The air was thick with the scent of cigar smoke and something sharper, something chemical that Hastings could not quite place. A small vial, empty but for a faint residue, lay on the floor near Sir Reginald's outstretched hand. Lady Eleanor stood by the window, her face ashen, her hands clasped tightly before her. Clara, her auburn hair disheveled, knelt beside her father's body, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Dr. Malcolm Faber, ever the professional, was examining the body with a clinical detachment, though his fingers trembled slightly as he adjusted his spectacles. The other guests, Mrs. Beatrice Langley, Victor Crane, Colonel, and Mrs. Hargreaves, and Sylvia Wren stood in a loose semicircle, their expressions a mix of shock, fear, and suspicion. "What has happened here?" Hastings asked, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. Dr. Faber straightened, his face grave. "Sir Reginald has been poisoned, I'm afraid." The symptoms: constricted pupils, the faint odor of almonds on his breath, sage as cyanide. Death would have been swift, likely within minutes. He gestured to the vial. That, I suspect, contained the fatal dose. Cyanide. Mrs. Langley's voice cut through the room, sharp and accusing. Who in this house would have access to such a thing, and why? Her eyes darted to Victor Crane, who stood near the door, his face impassive but his fingers drumming nervously against his thigh. "Let us not leap to conclusions," Colonel Hargreaves interjected, his military bearing intact despite the strain in his voice. "We must call the police at once." "Already done," Lady Eleanor said faintly, her voice barely above a whisper. "They are on their way from Exeter, but, oh, Reginald, how could this happen?" She swayed, and Sylvia Wren hurried to her side, guiding her to a chair. Hastings, his mind racing, began to catalogue the details. The time of death, likely between midnight and 2 a.m., based on the rigidity of the body. The empty vial, its label too smudged to read. The brandy glass, untouched by any but Sir Reginald. And the locked windows and doors, suggesting no intruder had entered the library. He felt a pang of regret that his friend, Hercule Poirot, was not present to bring order to this chaos. Yet, as if summoned by the thought, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. Hercule Poirot, impeccable in a tailored suit, his mustache waxed to perfection, surveyed the scene with his piercing green eyes. His presence, though diminutive in stature, commanded the room. "Mon ami Hastings," he said, his voice calm and precise, "it seems I arrive at a most inopportune moment, or perhaps the most opportune." He inclined his head toward Lady Eleanor. "Madame, my deepest condolences. I was passing through Devonshire on my way to London when your urgent message reached me. Now, I see why." Lady Eleanor, regaining some composure, explained that she had telegraphed Poirot at 5:30 a.m. Upon discovering her husband's body, she had heard of his reputation, and in her desperation, sought his expertise. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable, and approached the body. He examined the vial, the brandy glass, and the surrounding area with a meticulous care that Hastings knew well. "The little grey cells, they begin to work," Poirot murmured, almost to himself. He turned to the assembled guests, his gaze sweeping over each face. "Mesdames et messieurs, a crime has been committed, a crime most foul. Sir Reginald Barrington, a man of wealth and influence, has been taken from us by poison. I, Hercule Poirot, will uncover the truth. But I require your cooperation. No one is to leave this house until I have spoken with each of you." A murmur of protest rose, quickly silenced by Poirot's raised hand. Nan, it is not a request. Now, let us establish the facts. Who was the last to see Sir Reginald alive?" Clara, her voice trembling, spoke first. "I saw him at 11:30 p.m., in the corridor. We argued about a personal matter. He was upset, but very much alive." Her eyes flicked to the floor, avoiding Poirot's gaze. "And you, Madame Barrington?" Poirot asked, turning to Lady Eleanor. "I retired to my room at 11 p.m., she replied. "Reginald said he would work late in the library. I did not see him after that." One by one, the guests offered their alibis. Victor Crane claimed to have been in his room, reviewing business papers. Until 1 a.m. Mrs. Langley insisted she had gone to bed at 10:30 p.m., disturbed by no one. Colonel Hargreaves and his wife swore they were together in their suite, playing cards until midnight. Sylvia Wren, hesitating, admitted to wandering the gardens until 11:45 p.m., unable to sleep. Dr. Faber, with a slight flush, said he had been reading in his room until 2 a.m., hearing nothing unusual. Poirot listened, his head tilted, his fingers steepled before him. Bon, we have a timeline, but it is incomplete. The poison, it was administered in the library, yet the doors and windows were locked from the inside. A puzzle, indeed. He turned to Hastings. Mon ami, you will assist me, as always. Note the details, the glass, the vial, the position of the body. Every clue, it matters. As the police arrived from Exeter, led by a gruff Inspector Grayson, Poirot withdrew to a corner, his eyes narrowing as he studied the room. Hastings, ever loyal, began to sketch a rough map of the library, the chair by the fireplace, the desk littered with papers, the bookshelves, and the heavy oak door, its lock intact. He noted the time on the mantel clock stopped at 1:17 a.m., perhaps a clue to the moment of death. The guests, now under Inspector Grayson's scrutiny, grew restless. Mrs. Langley muttered about family disgrace, while Victor Crane's smile seemed forced, his eyes darting to the vial. Clara, her grief giving way to defiance, snapped at the inspector's questions, and Sylvia Wren remained silent, her hands twisting in her lap. Lady Eleanor, fragile yet composed, watched Poirot with a mixture of hope and fear, as the morning wore on. Poirot's demeanor remained unruffled, but Hastings knew his friend's mind was a whirlwind of deduction. Hastings, Poirot said softly, this is no random act. The poison, the locked room, the secrets of this house, they point to a mind both cunning and desperate. We must look beyond the obvious, to the heart of human nature. The stage was set, the players assembled, and the mystery of Blackthorn Manor had begun to unfold. Somewhere in the tangled web of motives and alibis, Hercule Poirot would find the truth, but not before the shadows of suspicion deepened and the first red herrings emerged. Chapter 3. The arrival of Hercule Poirot. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of Blackthorn Manor, casting long wavering shadows across the library, where Sir Reginald Barrington's body still lay, now covered with a sheet, at Inspector Grayson's insistence. The air was heavy with the scent of old books, lingering cigar smoke, and the faint acrid trace of cyanide. Hercule Poirot, having completed his initial inspection, stood near the fireplace, his small, immaculate figure a stark contrast to the chaos of the scene. His green eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the room with a precision that Captain Arthur Hastings knew well, a precision that missed nothing, not the smallest detail, nor the subtlest human gesture. Inspector Grayson, a burly man with a bristling mustache and a no-nonsense demeanor, was directing his constables to secure the library. No one touches anything until the coroner arrives, he barked, his voice echoing off the oak-paneled walls. He cast a skeptical glance at Poirot, clearly unimpressed by the Belgian detective's reputation. Mr. Poirot, I appreciate Lady Eleanor's faith in you, but this is a police matter now. We'll have this sorted in no time, likely some vagrant or disgruntled servant. Poirot's lips curved into a faint, polite smile, though his eyes remained cold. Monsieur l'Inspecteur, I assure you, this is no work of a vagrant. The locked doors, the poison, the timing, they speak of calculation, not impulse. But I shall not interfere with your methods. I, Hercule Poirot, prefer to observe and reflect. The truth, it reveals itself to those who listen. Hastings, standing near the desk, suppressed a smile. He had seen Poirot disarm skeptics before, his mild manner belying the razor-sharp mind beneath. Turning to his friend, Hastings said, Poirot, you mentioned the locked room. How could anyone have entered or left without disturbing the lock? Precisement, Hastings, Poirot replied, his voice low. The locked room is not a barrier, but a clue. We must consider not only how the poison was administered, but why it was done here, in this room, at this hour. He gestured to the brandy glass, still untouched on the table. And this glass, why only one? Did Sir Reginald drink alone, or was the poison meant to ensure his solitude? The guests, now gathered in the drawing-room under the watchful eye of a constable, were visibly shaken. Lady Eleanor sat rigidly on a velvet settee, her hands folded in her lap, her face a mask of grief. Clara paced near the window, her auburn hair catching the light, her expression a mix of anger and despair. Mrs. Beatrice Langley, her sharp features drawn, clutched a handkerchief and muttered about family scandals. Victor Crane leaned against the mantel, his slick charm replaced by a tense watchfulness. Colonel Hargreaves and his wife, Amelia, sat close together, their faces etched with unease, while Sylvia Wren, ever quiet, stared at the floor, her fingers twisting a silver bracelet. Dr. Malcolm Faber, his medical journal now tucked under his arm, adjusted his spectacles repeatedly. A nervous tic that did not escape Poirot's notice. Poirot, with Hastings at his side, began his interviews, choosing to speak with each guest in the privacy of the morning room, a smaller space adorned with chintz, curtains, and a view of the misty gardens. He sat in a high-backed chair, his posture impeccable, his notebook open on his lap. "We begin with order and method," he told Hastings. "Each person, they reveal themselves through their words, their silences, their contradictions. First was Lady Eleanor, her delicate frame trembling as she recounted her movements. I retired at 11, as I said. Reginald was in the library, working on his papers. He often stayed up late, especially since the business troubles began." Her voice faltered. "I heard nothing until the maid screamed this morning." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Business troubles, madame. Of what nature?" "Lady." Eleanor hesitated, her fingers tightening on her shawl. "Reginald's deal with Mr. Crane's consortium was risky. There were debts and disagreements. But he never confided fully, not even in me." Next came Clara, her defiance barely masking her grief. "I told you, I argued with father at 11:30 p.m. in the corridor," she said, her voice sharp. "It was about my future, my engagement to someone he disapproved of. He was furious, but alive when I left him." Her eyes met Poirot's briefly, then dropped. "I went to my room and stayed there." "And this engagement?" Poirot pressed, gently. "To whom?" Clara's cheeks flushed. "I'd rather not say. It's personal." Poirot nodded, but Hastings knew he would not forget the omission. Victor Crane followed, his answers smooth but guarded. "I was in my room, reviewing contracts until 1 o'clock, he said, his smile practiced. "Sir Reginald and I had a meeting scheduled for tomorrow to finalize our deal. His death is inconvenient." "Inconvenient," Poirot echoed, his tone deceptively mild. "A curious choice of word, monsieur. And these contracts, did they involve others in this house?" Crane's smile faltered. "Business matters, Mr. Poirot. Nothing more." Mrs. Langley was less restrained, her voice dripping with disdain. "Reginald was a fool to trust Crane," she snapped. "That deal was bleeding us dry. And Clary running off with some penniless artist. The family's reputation is in tatters." She claimed to have slept through the night, hearing nothing. Colonel Hargreaves and Amelia confirmed their alibi of playing cards until midnight. Their story consistent, but their glances uneasy. Sylvia Wren, her voice barely audible, repeated her claim of wandering the gardens until 11:45 p.m. "I couldn't sleep," she murmured. "The air was so heavy, so foreboding." Dr. Faber, the last to be questioned, seemed flustered. "Was reading until 2, he said, adjusting his spectacles. "Medical journals, you know. I heard nothing unusual, though I did see Clara in the corridor earlier. Around 11:30, he paused, then added, "As a doctor, I can confirm cyanide. Acts quickly. Whoever did this knew what they were doing." Poirot closed his notebook with a snap. "Mercy, doctor. You have all been most illuminating." As the guests returned to the drawing room, Poirot turned to Hastings. "Observe, mon ami, the contradictions. Miss Clara speaks of an engagement, yet names no suitor. Mr. Crane calls a man's death inconvenient, and Dr. Faberwhite as he mentioned seeing Clara unprompted. The little grey cells, they are intrigued." Inspector Grayson, meanwhile, had focused his attention on a groundskeeper, a surly man named Tompkins, who had been seen near the manor at midnight. "He's got a grudge against Sir Reginald," Grayson declared. "Sacked last month for stealing. He's our man, mark my words. Poirot's expression remained impassive. Perhaps, Inspector. But the obvious solution, it is rarely the correct one. Tell me, Hastings, what do you make of the stopped clock, 1:17 a.m.? Hastings frowned. It could mark the time of death, or when the poison took effect. Or, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming, it could be a message. A deliberate act. We must examine the clock, the vial, the papers on the desk. Every detail, it speaks. As the day wore on, Poirot moved through the manor with quiet purpose, inspecting the library once more. He noted the position of the brandy glass, the smudged vial, and a single sheet of paper on the desk, half covered by a ledger. It bore a single word, scrawled in Sir Reginald's hand, betrayed. Poirot's fingers lingered over the word. His mind turning, Hastings, watching his friend, felt the weight of the mystery deepen. The locked room, the poison, the alibis, each piece of the puzzle, seemed to point in a different direction. Yet Poirot's calm assurance was a beacon in the fog. The truth, Hastings, he said softly, it lies not in what is said, but in what is hidden. We shall uncover it, step by step. As the manor settled into an uneasy quiet, the shadows lengthened, and Poirot's little grey cells began to weave the threads of suspicion into a pattern only he could see. Chapter 4. The questions begin. The afternoon sun hung low over Blackthorn Manor, its golden rays doing little to dispel the chill that had settled over the household. The library, now cordoned off by Inspector Grayson's men, remained a silent witness to the tragedy of Sir Reginald Barrington's death. In the drawing-room, the guests sat in uneasy clusters, their conversations stilted, their eyes darting to the door where Hercule Poirot stood, his small, immaculate figure radiating an authority that belied his unassuming appearance. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever at his friend's side, noted the tension in the air, a palpable sense of dread, as though each person feared what Poirot's piercing gaze might uncover. Poirot had requested a second round of interviews, this time with a focus on the minutiae of the previous night. The truth, Mies Amos, he said, addressing the assembled group. It hides in the details, the glance, the gesture, the word unspoken. I, Hercule Poirot, will ask questions, and you will answer with precision. There is no detail too small, no moment too trivial. His voice was calm, almost soothing, but Hastings recognized the steel beneath it, the unrelenting pursuit of clarity that defined his friend's method. The interviews took place in the morning room, its chintz, curtains drawn to admit a soft, diffused light. Poirot sat at a small writing desk, his notebook open, his fountain pen poised. Hastings stood by the window, his military bearing softened by curiosity, ready to note any inconsistency in the guests' accounts. Inspector Grayson, though skeptical of Poirot's involvement, had grudgingly agreed to observe, his notebook mirroring Poirot's, but his demeanor far less composed. First to be questioned was Clara Barrington, her auburn hair pulled back tightly, her eyes red-rimmed but defiant. Mademoiselle Poirot began, his tone gentle. You spoke of an argument with your father at 11:30 p.m. Tell me, what was the nature of this disagreement, and why do you withhold the name of your suitor? Clara's jaw tightened. It was a private matter, Mr. Poirot. Father disapproved of my choice, that's all. I won't drag someone else into this nightmare. Her voice wavered, but she held Poirot's gaze. After our argument, I went to my room. I heard nothing more until the maids screamed this morning. Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. And this suitor, Mademoiselle, he was not at Blackthorn Manor last night. No, Clara said quickly, too quickly, Hastings thought. He's in London. Poirot made a note, his pen moving with deliberate care. Bon, and the broken vase in the corridor accident. What caused it? Clara flushed. I was upset. I brushed against it as I passed. It was nothing more. Next came Victor Crane, his polished demeanor fraying at the edges. He sat with a forced ease, one leg crossed over the other, his fingers tapping a restless rhythm on the arm of his chair. Mr. Crane, Poirot said, you describe Sir Reginald's death as inconvenient. A curious word for a man's murder. Tell me, What was the nature of your business with him? Crane's smile was thin. A consortium deal, as Lady Eleanor mentioned. Sir Reginald was to invest heavily in a venture abroad, a mining operation in South America. My role was to facilitate the contracts. His death complicates matters, but I assure you, I had no reason to wish him harm. And yet, Poirot said, his voice soft, Mrs. Langley spoke of debts, of a family in financial ruin. Was this deal, perhaps, a desperate measure? Crane's eyes flickered. Every investment carries risk, Mr. Poirot. Sir Reginald understood that. Poirot's pen paused. And where were you, precisely, between midnight and 2 a.m.? In my room, Crane replied smoothly. Reviewing papers, as I said. I heard nothing unusual. Mrs. Beatrice Langley followed, her sharp tongue undimmed by grief. This is a disgrace, she declared, settling into the chair with a rustle of black silk. Reginald brought this on himself, dabbling in risky ventures with men like Crane, and Claire defying him with that artist fellow. I was asleep by 10:30 p.m., and I heard nothing. That's all you need from me. Poirot tilted his head. Madame, you speak of an artist. This is Miss Clara's suitor. Mrs. Langley sniffed. Some painter chap, Lawrence Gray. Penniless, of course. Reginald threatened to cut Clara off if she persisted. She was furious, stormed out of the dining room last night, didn't she? Hastings glanced at Poirot, noting the faint gleam in his friend's eyes. A name, at last. Poirot made a note, then asked, and these financial troubles, how severe? Were they severe enough? Mrs. Langley snapped. The estate's been mismanaged for years. Reginald thought Crane's deal would save us, but I warned him it was folly. Colonel Hargreaves and his wife, Amelia, were next, their alibis unchanged. Cards until midnight, the colonel boomed, his face flushed. Then straight to bed. Didn't hear a thing. Amelia nodded, her fingers twisting a lace handkerchief. It's dreadful, Mr. Poirot. Who could do such a thing? Sylvia Wren, her voice barely audible, repeated her story of wandering the gardens until 11:45 p.m. I saw no one, she said, her eyes fixed on her bracelet. The house was quiet when I returned. Poirot's gaze lingered on her, but he asked no further questions. Dr. Malcolm Faber, adjusting his spectacles nervously, added a new detail. I forgot to mention earlier, he said, but I saw a light in the library window around 1 a.m. I thought nothing of it, sir. Reginald often worked late. Poirot's eyebrows rose. A light, you say? From your room, you could see this? Yes, Faber replied, flushing. My window faces the library wing. As the interviews concluded, Poirot closed his notebook and turned to Hastings. Mon ami, the pieces begin to form a picture, but it is incomplete. Miss Clara conceals her suitor's involvement. Mr. Crane hides his true stake in the deal. And Dr. Faber, why does he mention this light now, and not before? The little gray cells, they are restless. Inspector Grayson, who had been listening, with growing impatience, interrupted. This is all very well, Mr. Poirot, but I've got my man. Tompkins, the groundskeeper, was seen skulking near the manor at midnight. He had a motive revenge for his dismissal. I'm bringing him in for questioning. Poirot's smile was polite but dismissive. Monsieur l'Inspecteur, you chase the obvious, but the obvious is a trap. Consider the vial of cyanide. Where did it come from? And the word betrayed on Sir Reginald's desk. Who felt betrayed, and why? Hastings, reviewing his notes, pointed out the stopped clock. Poirot, the clock at 1:17 a.m. Could it indicate when the poison was administered? Perhaps, Poirot mused, or perhaps it is a distraction. We must examine the clock itself, and the papers on the desk. Hastings, you will assist me. Together, they returned to the library, now empty save for a constable guarding the door. Poirot inspected the mantel clock, its hands frozen at 1:17 a.m. He opened its back, revealing a mechanism that appeared untouched, yet he frowned. The clock was stopped deliberately, he said. Not broken, but stopped. A message, perhaps, or a misdirection. He then turned to the desk, where the single sheet of paper with the word betrayed lay beneath a ledger. Poirot lifted the ledger carefully, revealing a torn envelope addressed to Sir Reginald. Inside was a letter, its contents brief but chilling. "You will pay for your betrayal. Midnight." The handwriting was unfamiliar, the paper plain. Hastings felt a chill. "Poirot, this changes everything." A threat, delivered before the murder. "We, Hastings," Poirot said, his voice low. "But who wrote it? And why leave it for us to find?" "The game, it deepens." As the day drew to a close, the manor seemed to close in around them, its shadows hiding secrets yet to be uncovered. Poirot's calm exterior masked a mind racing with possibilities, while Hastings felt the weight of a mystery that grew more complex with every question asked. Chapter 5. The Red Herrings, the twilight-draped Blackthorn Manor, in a somber veil, its ancient stones absorbing the last vestiges of daylight as the investigation into Sir Reginald Barrington's murder deepened. The drawing-room, where the guests had gathered under the watchful eye of Inspector Grayson's constable, buzzed with whispered suspicions and stifled fears. Hercule Poirot, his meticulous demeanor unshaken, stood by the grand piano, his fingers tracing the polished edge as he observed the assembly with the keenness of a hawk. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever his faithful shadow, stood nearby, his notebook filled with details that seemed to multiply with each passing hour. Inspector Grayson, his confidence bolstered by his focus on the groundskeeper, Tompkins, had returned. "From interrogating the man at the local police station, it's as clear as day," he declared to Poirot and Hastings, his voice carrying across the room. Tompkins was seen near the manor at midnight, skulking by the library window. He admitted to a grudge against Sir Reginald for sacking him last month over stolen tools. "He's our man, Mr. Poirot. Mark my words." Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle sign of amusement or disdain. Hastings could never quite tell. "Monsieur l'Inspecteur," Poirot said, his voice smooth as velvet, "you present a solution most convenient, but convenience, it is the enemy of truth. This Tompkins, he is a man of labor. Where would he obtain cyanide, a poison so precise? And how would he enter a locked room without trace? Nan, we must look closer." Grayson's face reddened, but he held his tongue, turning instead to confer with his constable. Hastings, sensing Poirot's skepticism, leaned closer. "You think Tompkins is a distraction, Poirot?" "Precisement, Hastings," Poirot replied, his green eyes glinting. "The groundskeeper, he is the red herring, too obvious, too neatly placed. The true culprit wishes us to chase this shadow while they hide in plain sight. We must return to the clues, to the human heart, where motives lie buried." Poirot's attention shifted to the guests, who had resumed their uneasy interactions. Lady Eleanor, pale and composed, sipped tea with a trembling hand, her eyes occasionally meeting Poirot's with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Clara Barrington, her defiance tempered by grief, sat apart, her fingers twisting a silk scarf. Victor Crane, his slick charm fraying, conversed in low tones with Colonel Hargreaves, whose hearty laugh seemed forced. Mrs. Beatrice Langley, her sharp gaze darting about, muttered to Amelia Hargreaves about family disgrace. Sylvia Wren, ever silent, clutched her silver bracelet, her expression unreadable. Dr. Malcolm Faber, his medical journal, now a constant companion, adjusted his spectacles and avoided eye contact. Poirot, with Hastings in tow, decided to revisit the library, now cleared of Sir Reginald's body but still sealed by police tape. The constable permitted their entry, and Poirot moved with purpose, his eyes scanning the room anew. The brandy glass, the empty vial, the stopped clock at 1:17 a.m., and the torn envelope with its ominous note, "You will pay for your betrayal. Midnight." All remained as they had been, each a piece of the puzzle Poirot was determined to solve. He knelt by the fireplace, examining the hearth. "Hastings, observe," he said, pointing to a faint smudge of ash on the rug. "This ash, it is not from the fire, which burned cleanly last night. It is finer, like cigarette ash, perhaps." Yet Sir Reginald smoked only cigars. He collected a sample in a small envelope, his movements precise. Next, he turned to the desk, where the ledger and the note bearing the word betrayed lay undisturbed. Poirot, lifted the ledger, revealing a second sheet of paper beneath. Financial statements showing significant losses tied to the South American mining venture. A single line was circled in red ink. Crane Consortium, £50,000 outstanding. Poirot's eyes narrowed. This deal, it was not as secure as Mr. Crane suggested. A motive, perhaps. Hastings, studying the note, ventured. This word betrayed. Could it refer to the business deal, or something more personal? Poirot nodded. Both are possible, mon ami. Betrayal, it is a word of passion, of intimacy. We must learn who felt so wronged by Sir Reginald and why they chose this moment to act. Their inspection was interrupted by a commotion in the hall. Clara's voice, sharp and anguished, cut through the air. You can't accuse him. He wasn't even here. Poirot and Hastings hurried to the drawing room, where Clara stood confronting Inspector Grayson, her face flushed. Grayson, holding a telegram, looked grim. Miss Barrington, Grayson said, this telegram, found in your father's study, is from one Lawrence Gray, dated yesterday. It says, I'll be there tonight. We must settle this. Care to explain? Clara's eyes widened, but she recovered quickly. Lawrence is my fiancé. He was in London, as I told you. He didn't come here last night. Then why this telegram? Grayson pressed. And why did you hide his name? Clara's lips trembled, but she said nothing. Poirot stepped forward, his voice calm. Inspector, allow me. Mademoiselle. Clara, this Lawrence Gray, his message suggests urgency. What was to be settled? Clara's defiance crumbled. Father threatened to disinherit me if I married Lawrence, she admitted. Lawrence wanted to confront him, but I begged him not to come. He didn't, I swear. Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind was clearly racing. Mercy, mademoiselle. Your honesty, it is a start. He turned to Grayson. This telegram, it is another thread, but not the whole tapestry. We must verify Mr. Gray's whereabouts. Grayson, unconvinced, muttered about fetching Gray from London. Poirot, however, was already moving on, his attention drawn to Sylvia Wren, who had slipped into the room during the exchange. Her pale face and trembling hands caught his eye. Mademoiselle Wren, he called softly, a word, if you please. Sylvia approached reluctantly, her eyes fixed on the floor. You were in the gardens until 11:45 p.m., Poirot said. Did you see anyone near the library window? A figure, perhaps, or a light? Sylvia hesitated, her fingers tightening on her bracelet. No, no one, she said faintly. It was dark, and I was distracted. Poirot's eyebrows rose, but he did not press further. Instead, he turned to Hastings. Mon ami, we have many threads, Tompkins. The telegram, the ash, the note. But the heart of this mystery lies in the human soul. Someone in this house knows more than they say. As night fell, Poirot and Hastings retired to the morning room to review their findings. Poirot spread out his notes, including a rough timeline. Clara's argument at 11:30 p.m. Sylvia in the gardens until 11:45 p.m. The telegram from Lawrence Gray, the stopped clock at 1:17 a.m., and the financial statement implicating Crane. The red herrings, Hastings, Poirot said, they multiply. Tompkins, Gray, they are too convenient. We must look to the less obvious, the ash, the vial, the locked room. Hastings frowned. The vial, could it have come from Dr. Faber? He's a physician, after all. Poirot's eyes gleamed. An excellent thought, Hastings. We shall inquire about his access to such substances. But first, we must understand the betrayal. Who felt it, and why? As the manor settled into an uneasy silence, Poirot's little gray cells worked tirelessly, weaving the scattered clues into a pattern. The red herrings, he knew, were but distractions from a truth that lay hidden in the shadows of Blackthorn Manor. Truth he was determined to uncover. Chapter 6. A clue in detail. The morning mist clung stubbornly to the grounds of Blackthorn Manor, shrouding the ancient oaks and manicured lawns in a ghostly veil. Inside, the atmosphere was no less oppressive, the weight of Sir Reginald Barrington's murder pressing down on the household like a storm cloud. Hercule Poirot, his impeccable suit a stark contrast to the somber mood, stood in the library once more, his green eyes scanning the room with an intensity that Captain Arthur Hastings recognized as the prelude to a breakthrough. The library, though cleared of the body, remained a silent repository of secrets, its shelves and furnishings holding clues that only Poirot's meticulous mind could unravel. Hastings, his notebook open, stood by the desk, where the ledger, the note with the word betrayed, and the torn envelope with its threatening letter, lay untouched. Poirot, however, was not focused on these. Instead, he knelt by the fireplace, his fingers brushing the rug where he had found the faint smudge of ash the previous day. "Hastings," he said, his voice low but vibrant with purpose, "the little gray cells, they have been restless. This ashet is not from a cigar, nor from the fire. It is different, and it speaks to me." He produced the small envelope containing the ash sample, and held it to the light. "Observe, mon ami. This ash is fine, almost powdery, with a faint metallic sheen. It is not the residue of tobacco, but something else perhaps, a chemical, perhaps a substance burned deliberately." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "We must have this analyzed. It is a detail, but in the detail lies the truth." Hastings nodded, though he felt a twinge of frustration at the slow pace of the investigation. "Poirot, the ash is intriguing, but what of the vial? The cyanide? Surely that's the key to the murder." Poirot's mustache twitched in a faint smile. "Patience, Hastings. The vial, it is important, but it is expected. The poison is the method, but the ashet is the anomaly. And Hercule Poirot, he does not ignore anomalies." There. Conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Inspector Grayson, his face set in a scowl. "Mr. Poirot," he said brusquely, "I've had word from London. This Lawrence Gray, Clara's fiancé, claims he was at his studio all night, painting. No witnesses, mind you, but no evidence he was here either. I'm still betting on Tompkins, the groundskeeper. We found a gardening shed with traces of chemicals could be where the cyanide came from." Poirot's expression remained impassive. "Monsieur l'Inspecteur, you pursue the groundskeeper with vigor, but consider, cyanide is not a common tool of a gardener. It is a substance of science, of precision. We must look to those with knowledge, not merely opportunity." He paused, then added, "Dr. Faber, perhaps, could enlighten us about such poisons." Grayson snorted, but made a note. Poirot, undeterred, returned to the library's desk, his attention drawn to the financial statement they had found the previous day. The circled line, Crane Consortium, £50,000, outstanding, seemed to pulse with significance. Poirot opened the ledger, revealing pages of meticulous entries. But one page was marked with a small, almost imperceptible tear at the corner. He lifted it carefully, revealing a hidden note tucked beneath, a receipt for a chemical supply. Dated 2 weeks prior, addressed to Dr. M. Faber, Hastings. Poirot's voice was sharp with excitement. "This receipt is for a laboratory in Exeter, for compounds including potassium cyanide. Dr. Faber, he has some explaining to do." Hastings felt a surge of adrenaline. "You think Faber supplied the poison?" Nan, Poirot cautioned. "We do not assume, we observe. The receipt, it is a clue, but it does not yet tell us who used the poison, or how. We must speak with the good doctor." They found Dr. Malcolm Faber in the morning room, his medical journal open but unread, his spectacles slipping down his nose. He started at Poirot's approach, his hands fidgeting. "Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings, what is it now?" Poirot held up the receipt, his gaze steady. "Monsieur le Docteur, this document, found in Sir Reginald's ledger, suggests you purchased cyanide recently. For what purpose?" Faber's face paled, and he adjusted his spectacles with trembling fingers. It's for my research," he stammered. "I study toxicology, you see. Cyanide is used in controlled experiments, under strict conditions. I keep it locked in my laboratory in Exeter, not here." "And yet," Poirot said softly, "Sir Reginald was poisoned with cyanide, in a locked room, with a vial bearing no label. You saw a light in the library at 1 a.m., you said. Tell me, doctor, did you see anything else?" Faber hesitated, his eyes darting to the window. "No, nothing, just the light. I was reading, as I told you." Poirot's smile was polite but piercing. "Mercy, doctor. We shall speak again." As Faber left, Hastings whispered, "He's hiding something, Poirot. That hesitation is suspicious." "Oui, Hastings," Poirot agreed. "But suspicion is not proof. We must build the case, piece by piece." Their next move was to examine the stopped clock, still frozen at 1:17 a.m. Poirot, with the constable's permission, removed it from the mantel and inspected its mechanism. The clock was stopped by hand, he confirmed. The weight was lifted, halting the gears. "This was no accident, Hastings. It is a deliberate act, but for what purpose? To mark the time of death, or to mislead us?" They returned to the drawing room, where the guests were growing restive. Clara, her eyes flashing, confronted Poirot. "Why are you hounding us? Lawrence wasn't here. You're wasting time while the real killer escapes." Poirot regarded her calmly. "Mademoiselle, the truth does not escape Hercule Poirot. Your fiancé, he may be innocent, but your secrecy, it complicates matters. Tell me, what did you and your father argue about, beyond this engagement?" Clara's lips parted, then closed. "It was personal," she said finally. "He wanted to control my life, as always." Poirot nodded, but his eyes lingered on her. He then approached Sylvia Wren, who sat alone, her silver bracelet glinting in the dim light. "Mademoiselle Wren," he said gently, "you were in the gardens until 11:45 p.m., did you, perhaps, see Dr. Faber at his window, or Mr. Crane leaving his room?" Sylvia's fingers froze on her bracelet. "No," she whispered. "I told you, I saw no one." Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind was clearly at work. He turned to Hastings. "The bracelet, Hastings, it is a nervous habit, Nan. She touches it when questioned, as if it holds a secret." As the day wore on, Poirot and Hastings reviewed their findings. The ash, the receipt, the stopped clock, the threatening letter, and the financial statement. Each clue pointed to a different suspect: Faber, with his cyanide; Crane with his dubious deal; Clara with her hidden fiancé; Sylvia with her evasive answers. Yet Poirot remained calm, his mind weaving the threads into a pattern. "Mon ami," he said, "the clue and detail, the ash, the receipt, these are the keys. They tell us not only how the crime was committed, but why. We are close, Hastings, but we must tread carefully. The killer, they watch us, and they fear we see too much." As night fell over Blackthorn Manor, the tension grew thicker, the shadows deeper. Poirot's little gray cells were alight with possibility, and Hastings knew that the next revelation would bring them closer to the heart of the mystery or deeper into its labyrinth. Chapter 7. More lies. Surfaced the evening shadows, stretched long across Blackthorn Manor, their dark fingers creeping over the polished floors and ancient tapestries, as if mirroring the secrets that festered within its walls. The air was thick with suspicion, each guest's glance laden with unspoken accusations. Hercule Poirot, his small frame radiating a quiet authority, stood in the drawing room, his green eyes flicking from face to face, reading the subtle shifts in posture and expression that betrayed hidden truths. Captain Arthur Hastings, his loyal companion, stood nearby, his notebook filled with details that seemed to multiply like the shadows themselves, each one a potential key to unlocking the mystery of Sir Reginald Barrington's murder. The day had been one of relentless inquiry, and the strain was beginning to show. Lady Eleanor, her delicate features drawn, sat by the window, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Clara Barrington, her auburn hair loose and her eyes fierce, paced restlessly, her earlier defiance now tinged with desperation. Victor Crane, his slick charm eroded by scrutiny, leaned against the mantel, his fingers drumming in uneven rhythm. Mrs. Beatrice Langley, her sharp tongue momentarily silenced, watched the room with hawk-like intensity. Colonel and Mrs. Hargreaves sat close, their faces etched with unease, while Sylvia Wren, ever withdrawn, twisted her silver bracelet with nervous fingers. Dr. Malcolm Faber, his spectacles slipping, clutched his medical journal, as if it were a shield. Poirot, having concluded his latest inspection of the library, had gathered the guests to probe deeper into their alibis and motives. "Et messieurs," he began, his voice calm but commanding, "the truth. It is like a tapestry woven from many threads. some visible, some hidden. Today, we have uncovered threads of deceit, of betrayal, of greed. I ask you now to speak plainly, for the little gray cells, they grow impatient. Inspector Grayson, standing by the door, snorted softly. Mr. Poirot, we've got Tompkins in custody. He's admitted to being near the manor at midnight, and we found chemical traces in his shed. Why complicate things? Poirot's mustache twitched. Monsieur l'Inspecteur, simplicity is the refuge of the lazy mind. Tompkins, he is a convenient scapegoat, but the cyanide, the locked room, the note, these point to a mind more cunning. Let us explore the hidden threads. He turned to Victor Crane, whose smile faltered under the detective's gaze. Monsieur Crane, the financial statement, in Sir Reginald's ledger, shows a debt of £50,000 to your consortium. Yet you describe the deal as secure. Why this discrepancy? Crane's fingers stilled. Business is complex, Mr. Poirot. Sir Reginald was overly cautious. The deal was sound, but he delayed payments, causing friction. I had no reason to kill him. His investment was my livelihood. And yet, Poirot said, his voice soft, a man betrayed might feel otherwise. The note on Sir Reginald's desk, betrayed, was it you who felt betrayed by his hesitation? Crane's eyes narrowed. I wrote, no such note. If anyone betrayed Sir Reginald, it was his own family, squandering his fortune. Clara spun toward him, her face flushed. How dare you? You're the one who pushed father into that ruinous deal. Her voice broke, and she turned away. Her hands clenched. Poirot's gaze shifted to Clara. Mademoiselle, your anger, it is revealing. You spoke of an argument with your father about your fiancé Lawrence Gray. But was there more? A financial dispute, perhaps, tied to your inheritance? Clara's eyes flashed, but her voice was steady. Father threatened to cut me off because of Lawrence. That was enough. I didn't need his money. I wanted my freedom. Mrs. Langley interjected, her voice sharp. Freedom. You brought shame on this family, Clara, with that painter. And you, Eleanor. She turned to Lady Eleanor. You let Reginald indulge her, even as the estate crumbled. Lady Eleanor's composure cracked, her voice trembling. Beatrice, enough. I loved Reginald, and I tried to protect this family. You know nothing of what I've endured. Poirot's eyes gleamed at this outburst. Madame Barrington, what have you endured? A secret, perhaps, that weighs on your heart. Lady Eleanor hesitated, her hands twisting her shawl. Reginald, he was not always faithful. There were indiscretions, years ago. I forgave him, but it left scars. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I never spoke of it, for Clara's sake. A murmur rippled through the room. Hastings, scribbling in his notebook, noted the revelation could Sir Reginald's past affairs be linked to the murder. Poirot, however, was already moving on, his attention drawn to Sylvia Wren, who had grown paler during Lady Eleanor's confession. Mademoiselle Wren, Poirot said gently, you are quiet, yet your silence speaks. Your bracelet is a gift, Nan. From whom? Sylvia's fingers froze on the silver band, her eyes wide. It was a gift from Clara, years ago, a token of friendship. Her voice was barely audible, and she looked away, her expression haunted. Poirot nodded, but his mind was clearly turning. He turned to Dr. Faber, whose nervous tic of adjusting his spectacles had grown more pronounced. Monsieur le Docteur, the receipt for cyanide, found in Sir Reginald's ledger, it bears your name. You say it was for research, yet you failed to mention a light in the library at 1 a.m. until pressed. What else do you withhold? Faber flushed, his voice unsteady. I told you, the cyanide is locked in my laboratory. As for the light, I may have been mistaken. It was late, and I was tired. Poirot's smile was polite, but piercing. Mistakes, Doctor. They are rare in a mind trained to science. We shall see. As the interviews continued, a new piece of evidence emerged. A maid, trembling as she approached Poirot, produced a small key found in the corridor near the library. I found it this morning, sir, she whispered. It's not one of ours, it doesn't fit any lock in the house. Poirot examined the key, its intricate design suggesting a purpose beyond the manor's doors. Mercy, mademoiselle, he said, slipping it into his pocket. "This key, it is another thread. Perhaps it unlocks a secret, or perhaps a deception." Hastings, watching his friend, felt a surge of excitement. "Poirot, could the key belong to a hidden compartment, or a safe?" "Perhaps Hastings," Poirot replied. "Or it is another red herring, meant to distract. We must test it against every lock in the manor." As the evening deepened, Poirot and Hastings returned to the library, where the constable permitted them to search further. Poirot examined the desk, the bookshelves, and the fireplace, his fingers probing for hidden panels. He paused at a small painting above the mantel, a portrait of a young woman with auburn hair, strikingly similar to Clara. The frame was slightly askew, and Poirot's eyes narrowed. With careful hands, he lifted it, revealing a small safe embedded in the wall. The key, however, did not fit. "Mon ami," Poirot said, "this safe, it holds secrets. But the key, it is not the answer. We must find what it unlocks." Hastings, reviewing his notes, pointed out the growing web of lies. Lady Eleanor's revelation of Sir Reginald's infidelity, Clara's refusal to name her fiancé's intentions, Crane's evasiveness about the deal, Faber's dubious cyanide purchase, and Sylvia's nervous silence. "Poirot, everyone's hiding something. How do we separate truth from deception?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "By observing, Hastings. The lies, they reveal as much as the truth. The key, the ash, the safe, these are the details that will lead us to the heart of this crime." As the manor settled into an uneasy night, the weight of unspoken truths hung heavy, and Poirot's little grey cells worked tirelessly, unraveling the tangled threads of motive and deceit. Chapter 8. The emotional turning point, the air in Blackthorn Manor, grew heavier as the second day of the investigation drew to a close. The weight of Sir Reginald Barrington's murder, pressing down on its inhabitants like a gathering storm. The drawing-room, once a haven of polite conversation, now felt like a stage where each guest played a part, their masks of civility slipping under the relentless scrutiny of Hercule Poirot. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing by the window, watched the twilight deepen over the Devonshire hills, his notebook a testament to the mounting clues and contradictions that defined this perplexing case. Poirot, his small figure radiating quiet intensity, paced slowly before the fireplace, his green eyes darting from one guest to another. The revelations of the day, Lady Eleanor's admission of her husband's infidelity, the mysterious key, the hidden safe, and the damning receipt for cyanide had stirred the household into a state of uneasy agitation. Yet Poirot sensed that the key to unraveling the mystery lay not only in physical evidence, but in the raw, unguarded emotions that simmered beneath the surface. "Madame et Messieurs," Poirot began, his voice measured but commanding, "we have uncovered much, yet the truth remains elusive. The heart of this crime lies in the passions of those who knew Sir Reginald best: love, betrayal, greed, fear. Tonight, I ask you to reflect, for the little grey cells, they sense a truth about to break free." The guests, seated in a tense semicircle, exchanged wary glances. Lady Eleanor, her delicate hands clasped tightly, looked as though she might shatter under the strain. Clara Barrington, her auburn hair disheveled, sat with her arms crossed, her eyes burning with defiance. Victor Crane, his slick demeanor fraying, leaned forward, his fingers gripping the arm of his chair. Mrs. Beatrice Langley, her lips pursed, muttered about family disgrace. Colonel and Mrs. Hargreaves sat stiffly, their earlier joviality replaced by unease. Sylvia Wren, her silver bracelet catching the firelight, stared at the floor, her face pale. Dr. Malcolm Faber, his spectacles slipping, clutched his journal with a nervous intensity. Inspector Grayson, standing by the door, cleared his throat. "Mr. Poirot, we've questioned Tompkins again. He swears he didn't enter the house, and we've no proof he did. But that telegram from Lawrence Grade's suspicious. I've sent for him to be brought from London." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Monsieur l'Inspecteur, you pursue the obvious with diligence, but the truth, it hides in the subtle. Let us turn to the human heart, where secrets are laid bare." He approached Clara, his gaze gentle but unyielding. "Mademoiselle Barrington, your father's disapproval of your fiancé, Lawrence Gret, caused you great pain, Nan. Last night, you argued with him at 11:30 p.m. Was there more to this dispute than you have shared? Clara's eyes flashed, but her voice cracked as she spoke. You keep asking, Mr. Poirot, but I've told you everything. Father wanted to control me, to keep me from Lawrence, he said. He said I'd ruin the family name. Her voice broke, and tears welled in her eyes. I loved him, but he made it so hard. When I left him in the corridor, he was alive. I swear it. The room fell silent, her words hanging like a confession. Lady Eleanor rose, her face pale, and crossed to her daughter, placing a trembling hand on her shoulder. Clara, darling, you mustn't blame yourself. Your father. He was a difficult man, but he loved you. Poirot's eyes softened, but his mind was clearly at work. Madame Barrington, you spoke of your husband's indiscretions. Did these, perhaps, involve someone in this house? Lady Eleanor stiffened, her hand tightening on Clara's shoulder. No, it was years ago, before Clara was born. A woman in London, a brief affair. It was nothing. Her voice trembled, and she looked away, her composure fraying. Hastings, noting the exchange, whispered to Poirot, She's hiding something, Poirot. That hesitation, it's not just grief. Oui, Hastings, Poirot murmured. The heart betrays what the lips conceal. Let us press further. He turned to Sylvia Wren, whose quiet presence had grown increasingly conspicuous. Mademoiselle Wren, you are a friend of Miss Clara, yet you remain silent, your thoughts hidden. Last night, you wandered the gardens until 11:45 p.m., did you? Perhaps, see something you fear to reveal. Sylvia's fingers froze on her bracelet, her eyes wide with panic. I told you, I saw no one, she stammered. It was dark, and I was alone. Poirot stepped closer, his voice gentle but insistent. Mademoiselle, your bracelet is a talisman, Nan. You touch it when you are nervous, as if it holds a memory. Tell me, what does it mean to you? Sylvia's breath caught, and for a moment, it seemed she might speak. Then, with a sob, she bolted from the room, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. Clara started after her, but Poirot raised a hand. Nan, mademoiselle, let her go. Her flight, it is a revelation in itself. The room erupted in murmurs, Mrs. Langley's voice rising above the rest. That girl's hiding something, always skulking about, never saying a word. Mark my words, she's involved. Colonel Hargreaves, his face flushed, interjected. Now, Beatrice, let's not jump to conclusions. The poor girl's frightened, that's all. Poirot's gaze swept the room, noting every reaction. He then approached Dr. Faber, who had grown visibly agitated. Monsieur le Docteur, the receipt for cyanide, it troubles you, Nan. You say it was for research, yet you saw a light in the library at 1 a.m. Was there something else you saw, or did? Faber's hands shook as he adjusted his spectacles. I've told you everything, Mr. Poirot. I was reading, nothing more. The cyanide is in my laboratory, locked away, I swear it. Poirot's smile was polite but piercing. Swearing, doctor, does not make a lie true. We shall see. As the guests dispersed, Poirot and Hastings retreated to the morning room, where Poirot spread out his notes, the key, the ash, the receipt, the stopped clock, the threatening letter. And now Sylvia's sudden flight all pointed to a web of deceit that was beginning to unravel. Hastings, Poirot said, the emotional turning point, it has come. Miss Wren's reaction, it is not fear alone, but guilt, or perhaps loyalty. She knows something, and it is tied to that bracelet. Hastings frowned. But what about Lady Eleanor's revelation about Sir Reginald's affair? Could it be connected? Perhaps, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. An affair, a betrayal, a hidden safe, these are threads of the same tapestry. We must find the connection. Their discussion was interrupted by a soft knock. The maid, pale and hesitant, entered, holding a small crumpled letter. I found this, sir, in Miss Wren's room while tidying. It fell from her book. She handed it to Poirot, who unfolded it carefully. The letter, in a trembling hand, read, Sylvia, forgive me. I never meant to hurt you. Poirot's eyebrows rose. Mon ami, This is most illuminating. Sir Reginald, writing to Miss Wren, asking forgiveness. For what, I wonder? Hastings felt a chill. Could Sylvia have been involved with Sir Reginald? An affair, perhaps? Poirot's gaze was distant. It is possible, Hastings. Or perhaps something deeper, a secret that binds her to this house. We must speak with her again, but gently, for she is at her breaking point. As the night deepened, Blackthorn Manor seemed to hold its breath, the emotional cracks in its inhabitants widening. Poirot's little grey cells were alight, sensing that the truth was near, yet still obscured by the shadows of human passion and deceit. Chapter 9. The trap the night had cast its shroud over Blackthorn Manor, the moon's pale light filtering through the tall windows, illuminating the drawing-room where Hercule Poirot had summoned the household. The air was taut with anticipation, the guests' faces etched with a mix of dread and curiosity. Captain Arthur Hastings stood by the door, his notebook clutched tightly, sensing that Poirot was preparing to tighten the noose around the killer's neck. The revelations of the day Sylvia Wren's flight, the cryptic letter from Sir Reginald, the hidden safe, and the web of lies spun by each suspect, had brought the investigation to a critical juncture. Poirot, his small figure commanding the room, stood before the fireplace, his green eyes gleaming with the intensity of a predator closing in on its prey. Madame et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice clear and deliberate. We stand at the precipice of truth. The murder of Sir Reginald Barrington was no act of impulse, but a crime of calculation, woven from motives of greed, betrayal, and passion. Tonight, I, Hercule Poirot, will lay a trap not with force, but with the power of the little grey cells. One among you knows more than they have admitted, and I will compel the truth to surface. The guests shifted uneasily. Lady Eleanor, her delicate frame rigid, clasped her hands tightly, her eyes fixed on Poirot. Clara Barrington, her auburn hair catching the firelight, stood with her arms crossed, her expression a mix of defiance and fear. Victor Crane, his slick charm, replaced by a tense watchfulness, leaned against the mantel. Mrs. Beatrice Langley, her sharp features drawn, clutched her handkerchief, her lips pursed. Colonel and Mrs. Hargreaves sat close, their faces pale, while Sylvia Wren, who had been persuaded to return, sat with her head bowed, her silver bracelet glinting. Dr. Malcolm Faber, his spectacles slipping, fidgeted with his journal, his nervous tic more pronounced than ever. Inspector Grayson, standing by the window, crossed his arms. Mr. Poirot, I hope this isn't another of your theatrical displays. We've got Tompkins in custody, and Lawrence Gray is being questioned in London. Let's stick to the evidence. Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing on his lips. Monsieur l'Inspecteur, evidence is but the shadow of truth. To see clearly, we must shine a light on the human heart. Let us begin. He produced the small key found by the maid, holding it aloft. This key, discovered in the corridor near the library, does not fit any lock in this housette. It is a clue, but also a challenge. Who among you knows its purpose? His gaze swept the room, lingering on each face. No one spoke, but Sylvia's fingers tightened on her bracelet, and Faber's hand froze mid-adjustment of his spectacles. Poirot continued, his voice softening. And this letter, he said, unfolding the crumpled note signed by Sir Reginald. Sylvia, forgive me. I never meant to hurt you. R. Mademoiselle Wren, what did Sir Reginald seek forgiveness for? Was it a personal betrayal, or something more? Sylvia's head snapped up, her eyes wide with panic. I don't know what you mean, she stammered. It was a long time ago. A misunderstanding. Clara stepped forward, her voice sharp. Sylvia, what are you hiding? If you know something about father, tell us. Her words were a plea, but her tone carried an edge of accusation. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the room. Mademoiselle Wren, your silence protects someone or something. But silence, it cannot shield the truth forever. Speak, or the truth will speak for you. Sylvia's shoulders shook, and she buried her face in her hands, a sob escaping her lips. The room held its breath, waiting, but she said nothing more. Poirot, undeterred, turned to Dr. Faber. Monsieur le Docteur, the receipt for cyanide, found in Sir Reginald's ledger, bears your name. You claim it was for research, yet you saw a light in the library at 1 a.m. Was it Sir Reginald, or another, you saw?" Faber's face flushed, his voice unsteady. "I told you, I was mistaken about the light. As for the cyanide, it's locked. In my laboratory. I had no reason to harm Sir Reginald. He was my friend." "Friend?" Poirot echoed, his tone deceptively mild. "Yet the financial statement shows Sir Reginald's estate in ruin, partly due to a deal you advised him against, Nan. Did you feel betrayed, Doctor, when he ignored your counsel?" Faber's hands trembled, but he shook his head. "No, I tried to help him." Poirot's gaze shifted to Victor Crane. "And you, Monsieur Crane, the deal with your consortium, it was failing, was it not? The £50,000 debt, the note saying betrayed, did Sir Reginald's refusal to pay threaten your ambitions?" Crane's smile was forced. "You're reaching, Mr. Poirot. I needed Sir Reginald alive to secure the deal. His death ruins everything." Poirot nodded, his eyes narrowing. "And yet, someone felt betrayed enough to kill. Let us consider the stopped clock, 1:17 a.m., a deliberate act, to mark the time or to mislead. Who among you was awake at that hour?" The room fell silent, but Hastings noted the subtle shifts. Clara's quick glance at Sylvia, Lady Ellen, tightened grip on her shawl, Crane's sudden stillness. Poirot, sensing the tension, pressed further. The ash by the fireplace, not from a cigar, but perhaps from a burned paper. A secret destroyed, perhaps. And the safe behind the port, yet its contents elude us. Who knows what it holds? Mrs. Langley's voice cut through the silence. "Enough of this, Mr. Poirot. You're accusing us all, but what of Clara's painter? That telegram proves he had a motive." Clara whirled on her aunt. "Lawrence wasn't here. Stop dragging him into this." Her voice cracked, and she turned to Poirot, her eyes pleading. "Please, Mr. Poirot, find the truth. I can't bear this any longer." Poirot's expression softened, but his mind was relentless. "Mademoiselle, your pain, it is genuine, but your secrets, they hinder the truth. Tell me, what did you see in the corridor after your argument with your father?" Clara hesitated, then whispered, "I saw Sylvia, coming in from the gardens. She looked frightened, but I didn't ask why." All eyes turned to Sylvia, who shrank under the scrutiny. Poirot stepped closer, his voice gentle but firm. "Mademoiselle Wren, the time for silence is past. The letter, the bracelet, your fear, what ties you to Sir Reginald's death?" Sylvia's sobs grew louder, and she clutched her bracelet as if it were a lifeline. I can't say," she whispered. "It's not what you think." Poirot nodded, his eyes gleaming with understanding. "Very well. The trap, it is set. The truth, it will come, whether you speak or not." As the guests dispersed, their nerves frayed, Poirot and Hastings retreated to the morning room. Poirot spread out his notes, the key, the letter, and a sketch of the library's layout. "Hastings," he said, "the trap is not a confrontation, but a pressure. Sylvia Wrenchie is the key. Her fear, it is not for herself, but for another. And the safe, it holds the final piece of this puzzle." Hastings frowned. "But how do we open it without the key?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "The key, Hastings, is not always metal. Sometimes it is a word, a memory, a confession. Tomorrow, we shall see." As the manor settled into an uneasy silence, the trap was set, and Poirot's little grey cells worked tirelessly, poised to unravel the final threads of Blackthorn Manor's deadly secret. Chapter 10. The Reveal. The morning sun broke through the mist, enveloping Blackthorn Manor, casting a pale, unforgiving light across the drawing room, where Hercule Poirot had summoned the household for what he declared would be the final reckoning. The air was thick with tension, each guest's face a mask of apprehension, their eyes fixed on the diminutive Belgian detective whose presence commanded the room. Captain Arthur Hastings stood by the fireplace, his notebook clutched tightly, his heart pounding with anticipation. The clues, the ash, the stopped clock, the cyanide vial, the key, the hidden safe. and Sylvia Wren's cryptic letter had woven a complex web, and Poirot was poised to unravel it with the precision of his little grey cells. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice clear and resonant, "we have journeyed through a labyrinth of lies, motives, and betrayals. Sir Reginald Barrington was murdered in this house, in a locked room, by a hand both cunning and desperate. Today, I, Hercule Poirot, will reveal the truth, step by step, until the killer stands exposed." The guests sat in a tense semicircle. Lady Eleanor, her delicate features pale but composed. Clara Barrington, her auburn hair framing a face torn between defiance and dread. Victor Crane, his slick charm replaced by a wary stillness. Mrs. Beatrice Langley, her sharp eyes narrowed. Colonel and Mrs. Hargreaves, their hands clasped tightly. Sylvia Wren, her silver bracelet glinting as she twisted it nervously. And Dr. Malcolm Faber, his spectacles slipping as he fidgeted. Inspector Grayson, leaning against the wall, crossed his arms, his skepticism palpable. Poirot paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. "Let us begin with the crime. Sir Reginald was poisoned with cyanide, administered in his brandy. In a locked library between midnight and 2 a.m., the vial found by his hand was empty, its label smudged. The clock was stopped at 1:17 a.m., a deliberate act. A note on his desk read betrayed, and a threatening letter warned, 'You will pay for your betrayal.' Midnight, these are the facts, but they are only the surface." He turned to the guests, his gaze piercing. "The motives, they are many. Monsieur Crane, your consortium deal was failing, with £50,000 unpaid, a blow to your ambitions. Mademoiselle Clara, your father's threat to disinherit you for your engagement to Lawrence Gray fueled anger. Madame Barrington, your husband's past infidelity left scars, perhaps resentment. Madame Langley, you despised Sir Reginald's financial recklessness. And Mademoiselle Wren, your letter from Sir Reginald suggests a secret bond, one of pain or guilt." Sylvia's breath hitched, but she remained silent. Poirot continued, "The red herrings Tompkins, the groundskeeper, and Lawrence Gray were distractions. Tompkins had no access to cyanide, and Gray, though his telegram was suspicious, was in London, as verified by police. The true killer is here, in this room." A murmur rippled through the group, and Grayson shifted uncomfortably. Poirot raised a hand. "Let us examine the clues." The ash by the fireplace, not from a cigar, but from a burned paper, with a metallic sheen. I had it analyzed. It contained traces of potassium cyanide residue, suggesting a document was burned to conceal evidence. The key, found in the corridor, does not fit the safe behind the portrait, but it unlocks a small box in Sir Reginald's study, which I discovered this morning. Inside was a letter, written by Sir Reginald, confessing a secret. He produced the letter, its edges worn. It reads, "To whom it may concern, I have wronged one I held dear, and I fear retribution. My actions years ago caused pain I cannot undo." This, combined with the note to Mademoiselle Wren, points to a personal betrayal. Poirot turned to Sylvia, his voice gentle. "Mademoiselle Wren, your silence, your bracelet, it tells a story. The letter from Sir Reginald, asking forgiveness, it was not for a trivial matter. You are his daughter, are you not? Born of an affair, hidden from the world, known only to him and you." Sylvia's sob broke the silence, her hands covering her face. "Yes," she whispered. He was my father. He told me 2 years ago, when I came to stay with Clara. He swore me to secrecy, for Clara's sake, for the family's honor. I hated him for it, but I loved him too." Clara gasped, her eyes wide. "Sylvia, why didn't you tell me?" "I couldn't," Sylvia said, tears streaming. "He made me promise. But he was going to tell everyone, to change his will. Begged him not to. I didn't want the scandal, the pain." Poirot nodded, his eyes softening. "And this Amos, brings us to the heart of the crime. Sir Reginald's decision to reveal Sylvia's parentage threatened someone's position, someone's inheritance, but the killer was not Sylvia." He turned to Dr. Faber, whose face had gone ashen. "Monsieur le Docteur, you purchased cyanide for your research, But you lied about the light in the library at 1 a.m. You were there, were you not? You saw Sir Reginald, and you acted. Faber's hands shook, his spectacles falling to the floor. No, I didn't. I couldn't. Poirot's voice was relentless. You were Sir Reginald's friend, but also his physician. You knew of his affair, of Sylvia's parentage, because he confided in you. When he decided to make it public, it threatened your secret. You, too, had a past with the same woman, Sylvia's mother. You feared exposure, ruin, perhaps even blackmail. You obtained the cyanide, and you used your knowledge of Sir Reginald's habits to poison his brandy. Faber's voice broke. It wasn't like that. He was going to destroy everything. I only meant to talk to him, to stop him. I put the cyanide in the vial, to scare him, but he drank it before I could stop him. The room erupted, in gasps. Lady Eleanor clutched Clara, who stared at Sylvia in shock. Crane's face was grim, Mrs. Langley's triumphant. Poirot raised a hand for silence. The locked room, it was no mystery. You entered through the study, connected by a hidden passage behind the bookshelf, known only to Sir Reginald and his closest confidants. You stopped the clock at 1:17 a.m. to confuse the timeline, and you burned a draft of Sir Reginald's confession to hide your motive. The note betrayed. It was your sentiment, Doctor, for you felt betrayed by his decision to reveal the past. Faber collapsed into a chair, sobbing. I didn't mean to kill him. I only wanted to protect myself. Grayson stepped forward, his face grim. Dr. Faber, you're under arrest. As the constable led Faber away, the room fell silent, the weight of the truth settling over them. Poirot turned to Sylvia, his voice gentle. Mademoiselle, your secret is safe, if you wish it. The truth, it has been served. As the guests dispersed, shaken and subdued, Hastings approached Poirot. How did you know, Poirot? The ash, the letter, it all came together. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The little gray cells, Hastings. They see what others missed, the detail, the contradiction, the human heart. Now, let us leave this house of sorrow. The mystery of Blackthorn Manor was solved, but its shadows would linger, a testament to the devastating power of secrets and betrayal. Chapter 11. The Reflection, the morning following. Hercule Poirot's dramatic revelation in the drawing-room of Blackthorn Manor was one of quiet aftermath, as though the house itself exhaled a long-held breath. The mist that had clung to the Devonshire hills had lifted, revealing a landscape bathed in pale sunlight. Its clarity a stark contrast to the shadows of deceit that had clouded the manor for days. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing by the window of the morning-room, gazed out at the rolling lawns, his mind replaying the events of the previous evening. Dr. Malcolm Faber's confession, Sylvia Wren's heartbreaking secret, and Poirot's masterful unraveling of the truth. His notebook, now filled with the final details of the case, lay open on the table, a testament to the complexity of human motives they had uncovered. Poirot, impeccable as ever in his tailored suit, sat at the small writing desk, his fountain pen poised over a letter he was composing to an acquaintance in London. His mustache was perfectly waxed, his demeanor calm. Yet Hastings knew his friend's mind was still turning, reflecting on the intricacies of the case. The guests, though free to leave, remained in the manor, their movements subdued, their conversations hushed. Lady Eleanor and Clara sat together in the drawing-room, their hands clasped, grappling with the revelation of Sylvia's parentage. Sylvia herself had withdrawn to her room, her silver bracelet a silent reminder of her hidden bond to Sir Reginald. Victor Crane, his business prospects in tatters, prepared to depart for London, while Mrs. Beatrice Langley muttered about the family's ruined reputation. Colonel and Mrs. Hargreaves, shaken but relieved, spoke of returning to their quiet life in the country. Inspector Grayson, his skepticism of Poirot, replaced by grudging respect, had taken Dr. Faber into custody. The physician's tearful confession, echoing in the minds of all who had witnessed it. The manor, though still grand, seemed diminished, its opulence overshadowed by the tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. Hastings approached Poirot, his voice low. Poirot, you were magnificent last night. The way you pieced it all together, the ash, the key, the safe, Sylvia's letter, was like watching a puzzle fall into place. But how did you know Faber was the key, and not Crane or Clara? Set down his pen, his green eyes gleaming with quiet satisfaction. Mon ami, the little gray cells. They see what the heart conceals. Dr. Faber's nervousness, his hesitation about the light in the library, his access to cyanide. These were not coincidences. But it was the human element, Hastings, that revealed the truth. The note betrayed, the letter to Silvio, they spoke of a personal wound, not merely a financial one. Faber's fear of exposure, his connection to Sylvia's mother, it was the thread that tied all clues together. Hastings nodded, flipping through his notebook. The ash with cyanide residue, that was a stroke of genius, Poirot. You realized. He burned a confession to cover his tracks. Oui, Poirot said, his voice soft. The ash, it was the anomaly. Sir Reginald smoked cigars, yet the ash was fine, metallic evidence of a burned document, laced with the poison's residue. It told me the killer sought to destroy proof of their motive. And the stopped clock at 1:17 a.m. a deliberate act to mislead, to suggest a later time of death. Faber, he was clever, but not clever enough. Hastings frowned, a question lingering. And Sylvia, why did you let her keep her secret? The truth about her being Sir Reginald's daughter could have changed everything for the family. Poirot's expression softened, a rare glimpse of compassion in his precise demeanor. Mademoiselle Wren, she has suffered enough. To reveal her parentage publicly would bring only pain to her, to Mademoiselle Clara, to Madame Barrington. The crime is solved, the guilty punished. There is no need to wound further. Hercule Poirot, he is not a destroyer of hearts, but a seeker of justice. Hastings smiled, warmed by his friend's humanity. You're a remarkable man, Poirot. But what of the safe? We never opened it. Could it hold more secrets? Poirot's mustache twitched, a hint of mischief in his eyes. The safe, Hastings. It is a minor matter now. I suspect it contains Sir Reginald's will, perhaps revised to acknowledge Sylvia. But that is for the family to discover, in their own time. Our work here is done. As they spoke, Lady Eleanor entered the morning room, her face pale but composed. Mr. Poirot, she said, her voice steady, despite her grief, I cannot thank you enough. You've brought us truth, though it is a bitter one. How can we repay you? Poirot rose, bowing slightly. Madame, the thanks of Hercule Poirot are simple. Live well, and guard your family's peace. The truth, it is its own reward. Lady. Eleanor nodded, tears in her eyes, and withdrew. Hastings watched her go, then turned to Poirot. What now, Poirot? Back to London. Oui, mon ami, Poirot said, gathering his papers. But first, a moment to reflect. The case of Blackthorn Manor. It reminds us of the fragility of human bonds. Love, trust, betrayal. Each soul carries its secrets, and sometimes those secrets lead to tragedy. Yet it is order and method that restore balance. They stepped outside, the crisp autumn air a welcome relief after the manor's stifling atmosphere. The gardens, bathed in sunlight, seemed to promise renewal, though the scars of the past would linger. Poirot paused by the gravel drive, his gaze distant. Hastings, do you ever consider the weight of secrets? They are like stones in a river, diverting the flow of truth. Yet, with patience, the river finds its course. Hastings chuckled. You're waxing philosophical, Poirot. But I suppose that's why you're the greatest detective I know. Poirot's eyes twinkled. Flattery, Hastings. It is unnecessary. The little gray cells, they suffice. As they boarded the car that would take them to the station, Poirot cast one last glance at Blackthorn Manor, its towers standing resolute against the sky. The mystery was solved, the killer unmasked, but the echoes of betrayal would linger in its halls. For Poirot, however, the case was closed, and his thoughts turned to the next challenge. The next puzzle that awaited his unparalleled intellect. The car rolled away, leaving the manor behind, a silent monument to the truths uncovered and the secrets left buried. Hastings, watching the countryside pass, felt a quiet pride in his friend's genius, knowing that wherever they went, Poirot's little gray cells would illuminate even the darkest corners of the human heart. Chapter 12. The unseen motive, the quiet of Blackthorn Manor, though restored in the wake of Hercule Poirot's revelation, was a fragile veneer, masking currents of unresolved tension that lingered among its inhabitants. The morning sun, filtering through the tall windows of the morning room, cast a soft glow over the polished furniture. But the air remained heavy with the aftermath of Sir Reginald Barrington's murder. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated at the writing desk, reviewed his notes, his mind still grappling with the intricacies of the case. Dr. Malcolm Faber's confession had closed the investigation. Yet a nagging unease persisted, a sense that some thread remained untied. Hercule Poirot, standing by the window, his hands clasped behind his back, seemed to share this sentiment, his green eyes distant, his mustache twitching as if his little grey cells were stirring anew. "Hastings," Poirot said, turning from the window, "you are troubled, Nan. The case is solved, the murderer in custody. Yet you feel, as I do, that something is amiss." Hastings nodded, closing his notebook. "It's too neat, Poirot. Faber's confession, it explains the cyanide, the burned paper, the stopped clock. But why did he leave the vial? And that note, betrayed, it feels personal beyond his fear of exposure. Could there be more to this?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Precisement, mon ami. The little grey cells, they do not rest. Dr. Faber, he has confessed, but his motive, it is incomplete. Fear of scandal, oui, but there is a deeper passion, a hidden wound. We must look again to the heart of Blackthorn Manor." The household, though subdued, was preparing to move forward. Lady Eleanor and Clara had retreated to the drawing-room, their bond strengthened by shared grief and the revelation of Sylvia Wren's parentage. Sylvia herself remained in her room, her silence a shield against the weight of her secret. Victor Crane, his business prospects shattered, had left for London, his departure marked by a curt farewell. Mrs. Beatrice Langley lingered, her sharp tongue now tempered by the family's tragedy, while Colonel and Mrs. Hargreaves spoke of returning to their quiet life, eager to escape the manor's oppressive atmosphere. Poirot, sensing the need for one final inquiry, requested a private meeting with Lady Eleanor and Clara in the morning-room. As they entered, their faces pale but composed, Poirot bowed slightly. "Mademoiselle," he said, his voice gentle, "I regret to disturb you, but the truth, it is not yet complete. There is a question that remains unanswered, a motive that lies hidden in the shadows of this house." Lady Eleanor's hands trembled, but she met Poirot's gaze. "Mr. Poirot, you've done so much already. Dr. Faber confessed. What more is there to know?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Madame, the note on Sir Reginald's desk, betrayed. It speaks of a personal wound, one that Dr. Faber's fear of scandal does not fully explain. And the letter to Mademoiselle Wren, asking forgiveness, suggests a deeper connection, one that touches your family. Tell me, was there another secret Sir Reginald kept from you?" Clara's eyes flashed, but she remained silent. Lady Eleanor hesitated, then spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "There was a rumor, years ago, about Reginald and Sylvia's mother, Margaret Wren. I forgave him, but I never knew the full truth. When Sylvia came to stay, I suspected, but I couldn't bear to ask." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. "And you, mademoiselle? Clara, did you know of Sylvia's parentage before yesterday?" Clara shook her head, her voice tight. "No, father never told me. But I saw how he looked at Sylvia, how he favored her. It made me angry, but I didn't understand why until now." Poirot's gaze softened. "Mercy, mesdames, your honesty. It is a light in the darkness." Leaving the morning-room, Poirot and Hastings returned to the library, now empty of police presence, but still heavy with the memory of the crime. Poirot stood by the desk, his fingers tracing the edge where the note betrayed had been found. "Hastings," he said, "the word betrayed, it is not Faber's. His motive was fear. But this word, it speaks of love, of loss. We must reconsider the sequence of events." He knelt by the fireplace, examining the hearth where the ash had been found. The burned paper, laced with cyanide residue, was not a confession, but a letter, perhaps one Sir Reginald wrote to Sylvia's mother, Margaret, years ago, Faber burned it to hide his own connection to her, but the note betrayed it. Was written by another hand. Hastings frowned. Another hand. But who? Poirot? Everyone's alibi holds, except Faber's. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Not quite, mon ami. There is one whose movements we have not fully accounted for. Mademoiselle Sylvia Wren. She was in the gardens until 11:45 p.m. But what did she do after? Her fear, her silence, it is not just grief, but guilt. They sought Sylvia, finding her in the garden, seated on a stone bench, her silver bracelet catching the sunlight. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. Poirot approached gently, his voice soft. Mademoiselle Wren, the time for secrets is past. The letter from Sir Reginald. Your flight from the drawing room, you know more than you have told. Speak, I implore you. Sylvia's hands trembled, and she clutched her bracelet. I saw father that night, after the gardens. I went to the library, just before midnight. He was writing, upset. He told me he was going to change his will, to acknowledge me. I begged him not to. I couldn't bear the shame, the scandal. For Clara, he wrote that note, betrayed, because he felt I was rejecting him. Poirot's eyes widened. And then, mademoiselle, what happened? I left him, Sylvia whispered. He was alive. But I saw Dr. Faber in the corridor, near the study door. He looked strange, agitated. I didn't think anything of it. Until the next morning. Poirot nodded, his mind piecing together the final threads. Merci, mademoiselle. You have given us the last piece of the puzzle. Back in the morning room, Poirot explained to Hastings. Faber's confession was true, but incomplete. Sylvia's presence in the library prompted Sir Reginald to write. Betrayed, feeling her rejection of his gesture. Faber, seeing his chance, entered through the hidden passage, poisoned the brandy, and burned the letter linking him to Margaret Wren. The vial left behind was a mistake his panic overcame. His caution, Hastings shook his head in wonder. So Sylvia's secret drove the whole tragedy. Oui, Poirot said, his voice heavy. A secret born of love, twisted into betrayal. The human heart, Hastings, it is both the motive and the tragedy. As they prepared to leave Blackthorn Manor, Poirot cast a final glance at the house, its towers standing resolute against the sky. The unseen motive, Sylvia's hidden parentage, had been the spark that ignited the crime, and Poirot's relentless pursuit of truth had brought it to light. The case was closed, but its echoes would linger, a reminder of the devastating power of secrets kept and revealed. Chapter 13. The Hidden Passage. The pale light of late morning filtered through the mullioned windows of Blackthorn Manor, casting intricate patterns across the polished floors. Yet the house seemed to hold its breath, as if reluctant to release its final secrets. The resolution of Sir Reginald Barrington's murder, with Dr. Malcolm Faber's confession and Sylvia Wren's revelation as his hidden daughter, had brought a measure of closure, but Hercule Poirot's restless mind sensed an unresolved thread in the tapestry of the crime. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated in the morning room, flipped through his notebook, his brow furrowed. The case felt complete. Yet Poirot's insistence on revisiting the library suggested otherwise. Poirot stood by the window, his small frame silhouetted against the glass, his green eyes distant but alert. Hastings, he said, his voice low, the little gray cells. They are not satisfied. Dr. Faber's confession. It accounts for the cyanide, the burned letter, the stopped clock, but the hidden passage, it troubles me. How did he know of it? And why was the vial left behind, a careless error for a man so precise? Hastings looked up, puzzled. You think there's more to it, Poirot? Faber admitted to using the passage behind the bookshelf to enter the library. Perhaps he was flustered, and forgot the vial in his panic. Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of skepticism. Nan, mon ami, a man who plans a murder with cyanide does not forget such a detail. The vial, it was meant to be found, perhaps to point to another. We must examine this passage, for it holds the final key to the truth. They returned to the library, now quiet and empty, the police having concluded their evidence collection. The room retained its somber air, the desk still bearing the ledger, the note with betrayed and the faint scent of brandy and cyanide. Poirot moved to the bookshelf behind the desk, where he had previously discovered the hidden passage. With a gentle press, a panel clicked open, revealing a narrow corridor leading to the study. The passage, lined with dusty oak, was barely wide enough for a man to pass through. Its walls unmarked, save for a single scratch near the library entrances. Fresh mark, as if made by a metal object. Hastings, Poirot said, his eyes narrowing. This scratch is recent. A key, perhaps, or a tool. Someone used this passage recently, but not with ease. He examined the floor, noting faint scuff marks in the dust. More than one person, I think, has passed through here. Hastings frowned, but Faber confessed. 2 using it. Could someone else have known about it? Precisement, Poirot replied. The passage, it is a family secret, known to Sir Reginald, and perhaps a trusted few. We must ask who else might have used it and why. They sought out Lady Eleanor, who was in the drawing-room with Clara, their faces drawn but their bond visibly strengthened. Poirot bowed slightly, his tone gentle. Madame Barrington, a question, if I may. The hidden passage between the library and the study, who in this house knew of its existence? Lady Eleanor's eyes widened, her hands tightening on her shawl. It was a family secret, Mr. Poirot, known only to Reginald and me. It was built centuries ago, for privacy. I never thought it would be used for such a purpose. And yet Poirot said, Dr. Faber used it to enter the library undetected. How did he learn of it? Lady Eleanor hesitated, her voice low. Reginald trusted Malcolm. They were close friends, and Reginald shared many confidences with him, especially about the estate. He must have told him about the passage years ago. Clara, her auburn hair catching the light, interjected, But why does it matter now, Mr. Poirot? Dr. Faber confessed. The case is solved. Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind was relentless. Mademoiselle, a crime. It is like a puzzle with many pieces. One piece remains out of place, the vial, left behind. It suggests a second hand, a shadow in the background. Leaving the drawing-room, Poirot and Hastings sought Sylvia Wren, who was in the garden, her silver bracelet glinting as she sat on the stone bench. Her face was pale, her eyes haunted by the weight of her secret. Mademoiselle Wren, Poirot said gently, you saw Dr. Faber in the corridor near the study before midnight. Did you see him enter the passage, or perhaps another? Sylvia's fingers froze on her bracelet, her voice trembling. I didn't see him enter, but he was near the study door, looking nervous. I thought he was just pacing, but now, I don't know. Poirot nodded, his eyes gleaming. Merci, mademoiselle. Your memory, it is most helpful. Back in the library, Poirot examined the passage again, his fingers tracing the scratch mark. Hastings, this mark it is from the key we found in the corridor. It does not fit the safe, but it fits a lock in the study. They moved to the study, a smaller room lined with books and maps, where Poirot tested the key on a small wooden box on the desk. It clicked open, revealing a bundle of letters tied with a ribbon. All addressed to Margaret Wren, Sylvia's mother, in Sir Reginald's hand. Poirot read the top letter, his expression grave. These are love letters, Hastings, from Sir Reginald to Margaret, written 20 years ago. They confirm Sylvia's parentage, but also mention a promise to protect her, even at great cost. Hastings felt a chill. So Faber burned one of these letters to hide his own connection to Margaret. But why leave the vial? Poirot's eyes narrowed. The vial, it was a distraction, meant to point to Sylvia. Faber knew of her parentage, knew the scandal it would cause. By leaving the vial, he hoped to cast suspicion on her, should his plan be discovered. Hastings shook his head in wonder. So Faber not only killed Sir Reginald, but tried to frame be Sylvia Poirot said, his voice heavy. A desperate act, born of fear and shame. The passage, the key, the letters, they confirm his guilt, but also his cunning. He used the manor's secrets against it. As they prepared to share this final discovery with Inspector Grayson, Poirot paused, his gaze distant. Hastings, this case, it teaches us the danger of hidden truths. The passage, it was not just a means to commit murder, but a symbol of the secrets that fester in the heart. We have closed it, but the scars remain. With the evidence secured, Poirot and Hastings met with Grayson, presenting the letters and the key. The inspector, though reluctant to admit it, nodded in approval. "You've tied it up neatly, Mr. Poirot. Faber's going to have a lot to answer for." As the day drew to a close, Blackthorn Manor seemed to settle, its secrets laid bare. Poirot's relentless pursuit of truth had illuminated the hidden passage, both physical and metaphorical, that had led to Sir Reginald's death. Yet, as they prepared to depart, Hastings knew the manor would never fully escape the shadows of its past. Chapter 14. The final threads. The afternoon sun cast long, golden rays across the grounds of Blackthorn Manor, bathing the ancient estate in a deceptive warmth that belied the chill of its recent tragedy. The air within the manor, though quieter, now still carried the weight of Sir Reginald Barrington's murder, its resolution tempered by the lingering echoes of betrayal and hidden truths. Hercule Poirot, his impeccable suit as pristine as ever, stood in the morning room, his green eyes reflecting a mind still sifting through the final fragments of the case. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated at the writing desk, closed his notebook with a sigh, feeling the exhaustion of the past days, but also a sense of awe at Poirot's relentless pursuit of truth. "Hastings," Poirot said, his voice soft but firm. "The case, it is nearly complete. Yet the little gray cells, they insist on one final examination. The hidden passage, the letters, the keys, have confirmed Dr. Faber's guilt. But there is a shadow, a question of intent. Why did he choose this moment to act? We must tie the final threads." Hastings frowned, leaning back in his chair. "Poirot, Faber confessed to poisoning Sir Reginald out of fear of exposure. The letters to Margaret Wren, Sylvia's mother, proved his connection to her. What more is there to uncover?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Mon ami, the motive, it is never singular. Fear, oui, but there is also resentment, perhaps even love twisted into hatred. We must return to the heart of the matter, the relationships that bound this household." The manor's inhabitants were preparing to disperse, their lives forever altered by the events of the past days. Lady Eleanor and Clara, their bond strengthened through shared grief, were in the drawing room, discussing the future of the estate. Sylvia Wren, still shaken by the revelation of her parentage, had agreed to stay with Clara, their friendship now deepened by truth. Mrs. Beatrice Langley, her sharp tongue subdued, was packing to return to her own home, muttering about the family's tarnished legacy. Colonel and Mrs. Hargreaves, eager to escape the manor's oppressive atmosphere, had already arranged their departure. Victor Crane was gone, his ambitions crushed by the collapse of the consortium deal. Poirot, with Hastings at his side, sought out Lady Eleanor once more, finding her alone in the drawing-room, her delicate hands folded in her lap. Madame Poirot began bowing slightly. "I apologize for intruding again, but there is one question that remains. Sir Reginald's decision to reveal Sylvia's parentage, was it sudden, or had he planned it for some time?" Lady Eleanor's eyes flickered with surprise, then sorrow. "It was recent, Mr. Poirot. He told me a week ago, after years of silence. He said he owed it to Sylvia, to make amends for keeping her a secret. I, the first, begged him to reconsider, for Clara's sake, for the family's reputation, but he was resolute." Poirot nodded, his mind turning. "And Dr. Faber, did he know of this decision before the night of the murder?" Lady Eleanor hesitated, her voice low. "I believe so. Reginald confided in Malcolm often. They were close, despite their differences over the estate's finances. Malcolm was upset when Reginald mentioned changing his will." Hastings, listening intently, whispered to Poirot, "So Faber knew his secret was at risk. That's why he acted when he did." "Oui, Hastings," Poirot murmured. "But there is more. The vial left behind it was not mere carelessness. It was a message, a final act of spite." They returned to the library, where the hidden passage and the desk remained as silent witnesses to the crime. Poirot examined the bookshelf again, his fingers tracing the panel that concealed the passage. "This passage," he said, It was Faber's means of entry, but also his undoing. He knew of it from Sir Reginald, but he did not anticipate the scratch mark from the key, nor the letters in the study. Poirot moved to the desk, where the note betrayed still lay, its single word a haunting accusation. This word, he said, it was not just Sir Reginald's cry of anguish at Sylvia's rejection, but Faber's own sentiment. He felt betrayed by Sir Reginald's decision to reveal the past, to expose his connection to Margaret Wren. The vial, left by the body, was his attempt to shift suspicion to Sylvia, should his plan be uncovered. Hastings shook his head, marveling at the complexity. So Faber planned every detail, the poison, the passage, the burned letter, but he couldn't control everything. Nan, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. The human heart, it is unpredictable. Faber's resentment, his fear, his love for Margaret Wren, these drove him to murder, but they also betrayed him. The little gray cells, they see the pattern, where others see only chaos. They sought out Inspector Grayson, who was preparing to depart with the final evidence reports. Poirot presented the letters from the study, explaining their significance. Monsieur l'Inspecteur, he said, these letters confirm Faber's motive, not just fear of scandal, but a deeper wound. He loved Margaret Wren, and Sir Reginald's affair with her left him bitter. When Sir Reginald planned to reveal Sylvia's parentage, Faber saw his past laid bare, his reputation at risk. The murder was his desperate act to silence the truth. Grayson nodded, his earlier skepticism replaced by respect. You've done it again, Mr. Poirot. The case is airtight now. Faber won't wriggle out of this. As the inspector left, Poirot and Hastings returned to the morning room, where Poirot spread out his notes one final time. The timeline was clear. Sylvia's confrontation with Sir Reginald at 11:45 p.m. Faber's entry through the passage just before midnight, the poisoning at 1 a.m., and the stopped clock at 1:17 a.m. as a misdirection. The letters, the key, the ash, the vial fit into the puzzle, revealing a crime born of love, betrayal, and desperation. Hastings, Poirot said, his voice heavy, this case. It reminds us that truth is a double-edged sword. It frees, but it also wounds. Sylvia, Clara, Lady Eleanor, they must now rebuild, but the scars of this truth will remain. Hastings nodded, closing his notebook. You gave them closure, Poirot, even if it's painful. That's more than most could do. Poirot's smile was faint but warm. The little gray cells, they serve justice, not comfort. But sometimes, justice is enough. As they prepared to leave Blackthorn Manor, the final threads of the mystery were tied, the shadows of deceit dispelled. The manor stood silent, its secrets laid bare, and Poirot's relentless pursuit of truth had brought light to its darkest corners. Yet, as they stepped into the waiting car, Hastings knew that the echoes of this case would linger, a testament to the fragile, perilous nature of the human heart. Chapter 15. The departure. The sun dipped low over the Devonshire hills, casting a warm golden glow across Blackthorn Manor's ancient facade, as if bidding farewell to the turmoil that had gripped its walls. The manor, though still grand, seemed subdued, its opulent interiors now a silent backdrop to the resolution of Sir Reginald Barrington's murder. Hercule Poirot, his small figure, impeccable in a tailored suit, stood on the gravel drive, his valise at his side, ready to depart. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever his loyal companion, adjusted his scarf against the evening chill, his notebook tucked away, its pages filled with the intricate details of a case that had tested even Poirot's formidable intellect. The household had begun to disperse, each member carrying the weight of the truth uncovered by Poirot's relentless pursuit. Lady Eleanor and Clara Barrington, their bond forged anew through shared grief and revelation, remained in the drawing-room, planning the future of the estate. Sylvia Wren, her secret as Sir Reginald's daughter, now known to the family, had found a fragile peace, her friendship with Clara offering solace. Mrs. Beatrice Langley had departed earlier, her sharp tongue silenced by the family's tragedy, while Colonel and Mrs. Hargreaves had left for their country home, eager to escape the manor's heavy atmosphere. Victor Crane was long gone. His ambitions, shattered by the collapse of his consortium deal. Dr. Malcolm Faber, the confessed murderer, was in custody. His fate sealed by the evidence Poirot had meticulously assembled. Poirot, his green eyes reflecting the fading light, turned to Hastings. "Mon ami," he said, his voice soft but resonant, "the case of Blackthorn Manor, it is complete. The little grey cells, they have unraveled the threads of deceit, betrayal, and love that led to Sir Reginald's death. Yet, as always, the truth leaves its mark, Nan." Hastings nodded, his thoughts lingering on the emotional toll of the case. "You gave them justice, Poirot, but it came at a cost. Sylvia's secret, Clara's pain, Lady Eleanor's grief, it's a heavy burden for them to carry." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile softening his features. "We, Hastings. Justice, it is not always a balm. The human heart, it is fragile, and secrets, they are like thorns hidden until they draw blood. But we have brought light to the darkness, and that is enough." They walked toward the waiting car, the crunch of gravel underfoot a stark contrast to the silence of the manor. Hastings glanced back, noting the towers silhouetted against the sky. The hidden passage, the letters, the vial you saw through it all, Poirot. That scratch mark on the passage, the ash with cyanide residue. How did you know they were so crucial? Poirot's eyes gleamed with quiet pride. "The little grey cells, Hastings, they see the anomaly, the detail that does not fit. The scratch." Marquette told of a key used in haste, by one not accustomed to the passage. The ashet was not mere debris, but evidence of a burned secret, laced with the poison that killed Sir Reginald. Each clue it spoke, and I listened. Hastings chuckled. "You make it sound so simple, but I know better. What about the safe behind the portrait? We never opened it." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "The safe, it likely holds Sir Reginald's revised will, acknowledging Sylvia. But that is for the family to discover, in their own time. Hercule Poirot, he does not pry into private grief when the crime is solved." As they reached the car, Lady Eleanor and Clara emerged from the manor, their faces pale but resolute. Lady Eleanor approached, her hands clasped tightly. "Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings," she said, her voice steady despite her sorrow. "Words cannot express our gratitude. You've given us truth, however painful, and a chance to heal. If ever you need anything, Blackthorn Manor will welcome you." Poirot bowed, his manner gracious. "Madame, your kindness, it is appreciated. But the thanks of Hercule Poirot are simple. Live well, and let the shadows of this tragedy fade. The future, it is yours to shape." Clara, her auburn hair catching the sunlight, stepped forward. "Mr. Poirot, you believed in Sylvia when no one else did. Thank you for protecting her secret." Poirot's eyes softened. "Mademoiselle, the heart of Sylvia Wren, it is strong. She will find her place, as will you." As the car pulled away, Hastings watched the manor recede, its towers a silent testament to the secrets it had held. "Poirot," he said, "this case it's one we'll never forget. The way you unraveled Faber's motive, Sylvia's parentage. The hidden passage, it was like watching a master painter at work." Poirot's laugh was soft, almost musical. "Flattery, Hastings, it is unnecessary, but the canvas of human nature, it is complex. None, love, betrayal, fear, they paint a picture that only the little grey cells can decipher." The car wound through the Devonshire countryside, the hills rolling gently under the evening sky. Poirot leaned back, his eyes half closed, his mind already turning to the next challenge. "The world, Hastings," he said. "It is full of puzzles, each one a test of order and method. We shall meet them, you and I, and the truth, it will always prevail." Hastings smiled, settling into his seat. The case of Blackthorn Manor was closed, its mysteries laid bare, but the journey with Poirot was far from over. As the car carried them toward London, the shadows of the manor faded, leaving only the enduring light of Poirot's genius, a beacon in the darkness of human deceit.